Hi, my name is Michael Stein. The smartest people I've met have one common belief, that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to No More, No Less. I'm still your host, Michael Stein, and today in the studio with me, I have Michael Stein, a man of very many hats, titles, and adjectives, I would assume. Michael is an entrepreneur, an actor, a writer, a director, a producer, and a stand-up comic who has acted and worked with multiple Academy-winning actors and filmmakers. Michael's also the host of the Long Shot Leaders podcast, which tells the story of underdogs who have found success. So, without further delay, let's dive in. Michael Stein, welcome to the show.
Thank you to have me. I appreciate it.
After reading through your bio, I wanted to start in two places, kind of. Firstly, what seeing the film Rocky meant to you as a kid, and then how terrible that advice from your high school tutor was. So let's start with Rocky and kind of why that movie hit you so hard.
Well, I was a basket case as a kid. I had ADHD, dyslexia, a stutter. My mom talked like Don Rickles, so I try to imitate her, and I just stumble over my words all the time. I never had any success in anything. I had a lot of physical issues. Only the success I had as a young kid was being funny. And making fun of myself or others. So then when I saw the movie Rocky, I said, here's a guy like me. He keeps on failing, but he keeps on trying. He's funny. Only the difference between this guy and myself is that he was physically fit. So I said, I'm going to be physically fit finally. I'm going to be like Rocky. So I worked out every day. And by the time I was 16, I became a physical fitness trainer. And I was like, oh. And I had a lot of success with that. People was like, how'd you do what you did so fast and all that? So I said, I got two successes. I can make people laugh, and I'm a physical fitness trainer at the Nautilus gym, where I grew up in Encino, California. So then I told my high school tutor when I was graduating, she goes, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be an entrepreneur like my dad, who was a successful, he made a lot of money and he lost all his money. He grew up a New York homeless street kid, but he never finished the 8th grade and he made a lot of money. So if he could do it, I could do it. So I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'll be an actor and a stand-up comedian. And she goes, you might want to work with your hands because not everybody's meant to do what they want to do. And I was like, well, screw you. My dad was multimillionaire. And he lives in a van now, but he made a lot of money and he didn't finish the 8th grade. So the day after I graduated high school, I start my own business. It's selling tools on my telephone outside of my bedroom. And made 2 sales within like 45 minutes. And then I didn't sell anything for 2 weeks. And it's summertime and everybody's going out. And I was like, I folded the business. I said, this is not right for me. I'm not going to sit in my room forever. Right. So then I went to junior college and I studied drama, business, and psychology. And within 6 months, I decided, I'm going to do stand-up. And I brought a lot of people in. So I said, if I could bring a lot of these people in, how can I make money from these people? Well, stand-up comedy is not like a huge moneymaker, But dance clubs in the late 80s in Los Angeles was a big thing.
Huge.
So I said, I'm going to promote nightclubs. And within 6 months, I became the #1 nightclub promoter in LA at my age bracket. And that opened up the doors for me for a lot of things. It helped me become an actor. And my first acting role, like a year later, was playing Dirk Diggler in the Dirk Diggler Story, which eventually became the movie Boogie Nights, which I appear in as well. I became a filmmaker from there, and
right. And how exactly did that happen? Was that just meeting people throughout the nightlife industry, and they're like, "Hey, we might have an extra role, we might have this," or like you went and auditioned? Like, what was the, how did you basically move industries?
This is a really good story. So my friend Bradley Craig, before I started promoting clubs, when a year before this, I saw him in a movie called Stand By Me. He had a bigger part in that movie. And I was like, fuck, I said, look at all those credits. I said, if I just knew some of those people in those credits, I would be able to be in a movie like Brad. So about 6 months later, I'm on the set of a movie called Lesson Zero. I'm playing an extra, and I'm hanging out with this really good-looking guy for 3 days, and he's an extra. And later on, cut forward, it took me. I realized that I was hanging out with Brad Pitt, who is funny.
A really good-looking extra.
Yeah. And I got it wrong because I told my friends, I'm like, this guy's so nice. All these guys come out from the Midwest and they don't never make it, And I was like, okay. So then, like 6 months during that time, I'm promoting my nightclub, and I didn't know who Peter Guber was. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this. And I started dating his daughter. She liked me a lot, and I liked her, but I didn't know who he was. He turned out to be the most powerful man in Hollywood. He produced, at the time, just as I was dating her, he produced a movie called Rain Man. It won the Academy Award that year. They were going to invite me to buy the Academy Awards, but I was just started dating her. So around this same time, my girlfriend and her sister was dating a guy. His name was Paul Anderson, now known as Paul Thomas Anderson. And he was struggling. He didn't have a car. And he's like, somebody drive me home. I said, I'll drive you home. And he was just 17 years old. And I was on a roll. I had, you get on a roll as a stand-up comedian. You're like, somebody laughs at one joke. You're like, oh, there's a second one. And the whole drive home, I got him in stitches. 2 days later, he calls me up, says, hey, do you want to be in this short film I'm making? It's about the rise and fall of a porno star. I haven't fleshed it out yet. I don't have the name, but do you want to do it? I said, yeah, I'm in.
Sure.
So after we did some other funny videos, about 6 months later after that, we made the Dirk Diggler story. And that's basically through promoting nightclubs and meeting those people, met more people, and just constantly, I'm a workaholic. So when I promoted nightclubs, I went out 7 nights a week to promote my nightclub, and I went out 7 days a week to promote the club.
Right.
And, that was really a launching pad for meeting a lot of people, making contacts, which enabled me to make my own movies, and produce my own stuff. I would never say I never really clicked in over to Hollywood. I got close to a movie deal by making one of my screenplays, but I had already produced my own, which forced me to make my own business again, to be an entrepreneur again, because I worked in film for 5 years.
Right.
But that actually, all those people I met, it almost helped in indirect ways, helped me with my business. So that's pretty much like how I was able to segue into those things.
Got you. Yeah, because I imagine, like, if you're a guy in all parts of the industry, like you're doing the acting, the extras, you're writing, you're trying to do all these things. Like I guess you get that shot to get that movie deal, and if it happens, well then great, then you're down that path. But then if not, you kind of have to, reconvene and think what's next. Did you ever think of like sticking with one specific part, or is that not really possible in Hollywood? You kind of have to like take your breaks when you get them.
I was just missing this wave. First of all, it's a growing pain because when I dated Peter Guber's daughter, I really loved her, and when I found out who he was, I'm like, I don't want to take anything from anybody. Yeah. I got to do this all on my own, and I loved her so much. It's like I want to prove to everybody. I'm like, I don't want to take a thing. I mean, people would say, "What are you, nuts?" I flew on a private jet to Aspen, several times. They asked me if I want to go to Europe. They even sat me down and said, "Mike, we really like you a lot. We want to help you. What can you, And I was when I planned a big event movie for the Batman movie because he produced Batman. That was a big thing I did. I produced this big party for the Batman movie, and I felt like I could give them something. Right. Which earned me more, respect because I said, great story. Chris Peters, John Peters' son, who is famous for the movie Shampoo and loosely based on him. He dated Barbra Streisand. He produced Caddyshack, Star is Born, many, many films. And they're producing the Batman movie. It was in 1989. It's a huge blockbuster.
Enormous. Because at that time, it's not streaming. You hear the Batman's coming out and the way that it looked. I still remember I was, I guess, 10 years old at that time. I remember, like, I can still see the VHS case right. in the video store. That was a pivotal pop culture year for movies like that one.
Number one grossing movie it became at its time. So right. We're in Aspen. I feel like a fish out of water. It's a very fancy area. I see John Peters' son, Chris Peters, who I know from nightclubs loosely. great, right? And also he went to my high school, loosely named from that. I said, he's wearing a black leather jacket. I'm wearing a black jacket. You know, I see a guy like me. You know, it's not like the upper echelon out there on the streets of Aspen. You know, we're about to go in a Mezzaluna restaurant. I said, what have you been up to? He asked me, what have you been up to? I said, I've been promoting nightclubs. I go, what have you been up to? He goes, I want to promote nightclubs. I go, ding, ding, ding. I said, here's some worth, you know, because I'm the guy for that in LA.
Right.
So I sit down at a table with like 17 people, the two families, the Goobers and the Peters, and I feel comfortable in my space. When Chris and I are talking, and then everybody starts listening to us, and I said, look, we came up in this conversation. I said, we need to do a party for the Batman movie. We'll get the Park Plaza Hotel, which is the main hotel and like, you know, for nightclubs in LA. It's like referenced in Lessons Their Own speak of. And we'll get everybody in Hollywood to go to this thing. It'll be the biggest promotion for a movie ever. And 6 months later, we had 4,000 people, and I orchestrated this whole thing. We go back to Aspen a day after that trip to plan for it. I'm on the set of Warner Brothers. I'm meeting the head of advertising. You know, I'm 20 years old, 21, and I'm like sitting there working with all these people, and I orchestrate this whole thing.
Right.
And that's where I felt my worth. But when it came time for them to offer me something, you know, outside of me doing that, I said, no. I could have worked with the head. I could have segued my advertising, you know, job with Warner Brothers. I could so many things.
Right.
And then when I did the Dirk Diggler story and Boogie Nights came out, and I said, you know what? Maybe is it possible to play Dirk Diggler in the feature? You know?
Right.
And now I'm asking for something, and now I'm not getting it. So this push and pull and learning your worth is, look, Hollywood doesn't owe you anything. And so you asked, do you need to do many things? I think yes. Now that way, because the chance, first of all, you got to take your shot when you get it, and you need to do a lot of things in order to find that opening to get it. And you need to stay focused. You can't have the ADHD all the time like I do. But yeah, I think it's now, you know, Andy Warhol says you need to be a business person, you know, I'm paraphrasing, to be an artist. I truly think that's true. I really believe that's true. So that's kind of like my story and, you know, how I, you know, handled things.
Right. Well, yeah, with these days in the creator economy, I think it does go a little bit more hand in hand where you build an audience and then you find a way to sell merch or have sponsored posts or whatever the case may be, which I haven't decided yet how much that's really going to affect the art. Because if the artist is beholden to their audience, then they're going to create things that the audience loves opposed to only creating things that they want to see, you know, and just be more prolific with their art. But it's interesting how you talked about being in your 20s, because I have a joke with friends that we always say, like, you end up being around like 35 when you've gathered enough information in your life that you can actually look back and be like, okay, how the fuck did I get here? And you can kind of start to figure it out, like, okay, I met this person, and then you can kind of start planning from there. But in your 20s, like you as I did, you're kind of scrambling. You'd be like, okay, I know how to do this. This seems fun. I know how to do this. So like, if you could go back now and you were like within that family, I think you said their last name was Grubers, because as you said, like, they want to help you, and there's some stuff that they're like, you know, they can't give you a lead in a motion picture, but they can maybe give you acting lessons or things like that. Like, how do you think, looking back now, you would have answered that question?
Well, first of all, what I'd done was slow the fuck down, you know, and like think,
that's true.
You know, really, you know, plan out, you know, plan this whole thing out, and then open up the possibilities. Don't say, you know, I'd also, you know, do personal development. But what would I have done? I would have said, you know, you sit there and say, well, what path do I really want to take? Get clear, well, you know, and be a kid in a candy shop, because you're just like, well, I don't know if I deserve that. That's a big thing when you're in your 20s, at least it was for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I deserve that. I don't deserve that yet, or I shouldn't do that yet. I'm not ready yet.
Right.
You're never fucking ready. You have to really sometimes just dive in, and it's scary. You know, they're like, we know Bud Freeman at the Improv. Do you know? I said I want to be a stand-up comedian. So I said what I wanted, but I really didn't, take action on it. You know, I said, no, I need to do that for myself. I need to really get my material together. I need to do this and that. I said, well, then fucking do it, because I didn't realize how big though that give was.
Right.
It was in the, that year he was in Time magazine or People magazine for the most powerful man in Hollywood. And I'm thinking back now, And I was like, I was watching those credits and that's why I brought it up to you and the movie with my friend. And I'm thinking, I'm the number one actor in Hollywood, the number one now filmmaker in Hollywood, the number one producer in Hollywood. I mean, you could say Paul Thomas Anderson is like maybe number 3 next to like Tarantino as those young actors in the 90s, and then Brad Pitt, and we're hanging out, and he, what's funny about that Less Than Zero movie, he was a fanboy. He's like, hey, you want to meet Robert Downey Jr.? Because he was in the movie.
Right.
Like, we were shooting nights, we're walking up this driveway in Benedict Canyon, and he goes, there he is, and he gets out. He just wakes up. It's like 5 o'clock at night. And he's got his cigarette, but there's no light. He's like, anybody got a light for my cigarette? And he like sits down in his trailer, on the stairs, and he talked to us. He was a really cool guy. Andrew McCarthy, not so much. But anyways, I digress. So right. That's I would slow down, and I would know your worth, and take chances, bigger chances. Force right. that muscle to take bigger chances.
Yeah, I think that's really the hardest part in your 20s, because like, for one, slowing down for sure, especially if you're going out all the time and you're like sleep deprived, there's drugs and alcohol involved, so it's hard to get like you said, like to get clear, because like you're always kind of dealing with a hangover, and then there's a coffee in the morning. There's never time to sit down and like meditate and journal and try to feel what you feel and what you want. Like, what you don't want is to be broke. What you don't want is to not have anything, but you don't really know with intention what direction you're moving towards. And I've had that moment in my life a few times now, where I think I was 28 or 29, where I really felt like I was kind of like afloat, in a giant ocean of opportunity, but I didn't know what to do. Like, friends of mine were having all of their career paths chosen for them, either like teacher or bank manager or like sales at a big company, and none of these things interested me. And it wasn't until I read the 4-Hour Work Week once, and then I went and saw a therapist, and she was like, well, have you ever thought of entrepreneurship? And literally, I think I said, like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know what that means. Like, before the internet, like, the way to start a business is you needed like to take a gigantic loan or get a gigantic, loan from like a family member or something, and then you open up a dry cleaner. Like, so since when the internet started, that's when I really started being like, oh shit, what's happening here? Like, this seems like there's a whole new world that's opening up. And then after she said entrepreneurship, one of my friends was starting something up, and that kind of led to the path that's led me here today. But honestly, I didn't know what was going on. So I can imagine what it was like in Hollywood, which not only is everything so exciting, people are like good looking and fun and want to go out, but you can act, you can do improv, you can do stand-up, you can write, you can direct, you can produce. Like, honestly, it seems like a city that breeds ADHD, because it's hard the whole industry has so many things.
Right. And that was my problem. It's like, I was a health nut, and I worked out every day, and I still went to, I was going to nightclubs. It was a 7-day a week thing. But the thing is, I didn't have guidance other than the people I was hanging around. They were super successful, and they would have like a lunch with you. But I'm talking, if I would change one thing, one paradigm shift, you said it yourself. When you went to your site, you had therapy and all that. I would start personal development. If I can go back and say, look, that's the one thing, on a daily basis, have some type of coach that is just helping you with the vision and the plan for your life, really taking time with the passions, day-to-day decisions, because your dad or your mom, they might not have that skill set. And you also need somebody from the outside. And the people that you're hanging out with, they might be successful, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody that's like concentrating on you, really strategizing. Then you could walk away from that conversation, and you're able to think and then reason and make decisions, take calculated, really good chances with somebody you're going back to, like an oscillating pendulum, that finally, for every decision you make, it's swinging back and forth, but then it meets in the middle where you're zoned in on to be. That's a big, big thing. And they don't teach that in high school. They don't, and it's crazy, because that is the biggest needle mover.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like, I mean, it seems like, again, just thinking about Hollywood, and again, I've been to LA a handful of times, and that's it. But it seems to me from the outside is that, like, if you're like writing, directing, producing, like, these are like professions that you've studied for a long time for. And acting, it seems like though you're also studying for it, there is an element of like it's a gigantic lottery, that cage with all the balls in it, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, Brad Pitt, okay, Zach Braff, you're in Scrubs. Do you know what I mean? So I can imagine looking at it. Is it like once you're already mid-20s and have another business, you're like, I want to get in there, but it must have seemed like a bit of a mountain. So like, what made you like pivot at one point to say like, I'm going to start this business, which I'd love to hear about.
Right. And real quick, you always say, I used to say, I'm too young. Now I say I'm too old. Now I'm telling myself, who cares? I don't have time for this. Just do whatever, make your own rules. Doesn't matter anymore. So what happened is that I had some films under my belt. I just wrote, directed, and produced an award-winning short film, got bought by HBO, did really well, called Rituals and Resolutions.
Amazing.
And I got a lot of meetings around town, met with everybody, basically. And after a year and a half, just no movie deal. After, from this big wave of my short film and reading my screenplays, I got close. Trimark Pictures was going to make one of my movies as a gambling movie. They backed out because Robin Shore was the head of the studio, or that film division. She left. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to make some money, So I said, I'm going to do something on the internet. I heard this guy was selling ceiling fans. He made like $300,000. I said, screw it. I'm going to make my own movie, but I'm going to make money on the internet to pay for it. So I don't have to talk. I don't have to go through like, you got the money, you got the talent, you got the money, back and forth. Because you never get a movie deal because you're going back and forth saying that shit. So I made this movie that no one would ever let me make. It was kind of like a fuck you to Hollywood. I was like, I'm going to make this movie, even though, it's like unconventional. No, it was about, it's called Love Hollywood Style, about these 4 stories about love and dysfunctionality within Hollywood. And I got Faye Dunaway, 2-time Academy Award winner, to play God. I was typecasting. I got Andy Dick to play a porno director, which is apropos after you see what happened to him lately. And Coolio, which who would have thought after all these years that like the gangster rapper would have been the nicest person out of those 3. And I made this film and it did well, but it didn't really, I did this business, that gave me the money to do that within like, a year. And I said, and after this, I did this film, it didn't make enough money. And I was like, I'm just going to take care of this business, and when I can, I'll do stand up when I can. But I'm going to really kind of, really be, because that was my 3 things. I want to be an entrepreneur, a filmmaker, and an actor.
Right.
And an actor and a comedian, really. I did filmmaking so I could act. And since then, the business has made well over $100 million. And I've done other, small stuff in film, but I haven't made a film really since, but I've done stand-up. And I will do a film again. And I'm starting to do stand-up again. But the big thing now is that this business is taking off, and I'm starting another brand. As you can see, I'm wearing this hat, has this logo on it. It's a new brand company that I'm branching off that's launching this year.
Cool.
And my momentum with that is really great. But all those things, writing screenplays and doing stand-up comedy and all those things help the business. So you and I were talking in the pregame. You're doing this and you're doing that, and you're saying, I don't know if I should do all these things. But if they all kind of relate to each other a little bit, everything that you try to push yourself out there helps the other thing. So that's kind of like my story now, where I sit today.
Right. That's great, because where was it? I think it said when you were 33, you had $13 in your bank account and you're $3,000 in debt, and then you started I believe it's a tarp business. And in the first year, it made $500,000 in revenue. So I would love to know the math of how you made that possible. Like, because just like I've run some pretty inventory heavy businesses, and it can be pretty frustrating because everything that comes in is going straight out and back into more inventory. So how did you start that business? Like, where did the investment come from, and how did it take off so quick? Or even like, to start, where the impetus of the idea came from. Like, tarps isn't just like a nightclub tarps, obviously. Right? Like,
Right. So my dad had a tool business. My dad, after he made all that money selling calculators. It's called the Calculator Kid in the 70s. He sold his calculators. Before that, he was in the tool business in the late 60s. His business partner was a guy named Alan Smith. My dad went off to sell calculators, made millions of dollars, lost it all, went back to the tool business in 1975, 76. And there was that guy, Alan Smith, he started a company called Harbor Freight, which is a multi-billion-dollar company now.
okay.
My dad now is broke, and he's sitting there, and he had these tools. So then I said, you know what, I want to sell tools, and that was why I did tools when I first graduated high school. Now, I wasn't going to do that again, but he says, I got a lot of these tools, man. He's like, he's a jobber at this point. His heyday's over, and he's like, I got a lot of these tools. Here's a catalog with, suppliers. And I said, I don't want to sell freaking drill bits and, bracelet wheels and all that stuff. I tried that when I was in high school. I just want to sell one thing, and I saw tarps was in this catalog, that he had. And I said, I want to be able to sell this stuff because you could use it for a lot of stuff. And I also, said, a lot of homeless people use tarps, and I could donate them too, because I used to donate canned food for the homeless when I did a nightclub. It was called Turkey Soup. Get in for half price. And, if you bring a canned food for the homeless. I said, I could still do that for Thanksgiving. And you build a little story that motivates you. And I said, well, I could kind of see it's, I want to sell those ceiling fans, which are boring, but actually maybe this could be a little bit more exciting than that and have a lot of purposes, camping, hunting, fishing, I don't know,
Right.
Something a little bit more adventurous. So I just chose that. Plus then you look, it was calculated. It wasn't like Chaplin where he says, I'll do the mustache and this and that. And it came to him. You really methodically think about these things. And I said, the competition's not that bad, on the internet.
Right.
And I can get it for this, my margins could be that, I was smart enough to know that at that point.
Yeah.
So then I was working as a production assistant. I'm building a website, and Yahoo gave you 6 months free, the first 6 months, if you built a store. It was 45 days or some shit like that.
What year was this?
This is, I'm building it in 1999, just going into 2000.
Wow. As far as e-commerce goes, you're a pioneer.
Right. E-commerce started in 96. I thought I was coming in late, right? You talk to yourself, no, it's too late. It's too late. No, I just started. I don't care. So then I get home from like a 16-hour shoot. I build the site a little bit. Not too hard to build a Yahoo store back then. I only had 4 products, 4 colors, very simple. And I made my first sale, on a fax machine. The sale comes through. I was like, I made a sale. It's $230. Fax machine, right? And you see that fax, and you're like, oh, wow. And I was like, I was making $175 a day with per diem on a film shoot, for commercials as PA. I was like, holy shit. So you pick up the merchandise in my convertible Buick Skylark, and then I would then ship it out UPS out of my rented shack in Sherman Oaks, California, which I paid $800, and my fiance at the time was helping me pay half of that.
Right.
Who she ended up cheating on me with a guy named Bud. She was a habitual pot smoker. Cheated on me with a guy named Bud. What are the odds? So then I start getting 2 sales, and then 3 sales, and I'm going back and forth to these suppliers, and then 4 sales. And I'm like, kind of get by. I'm like, well, I could pay the rent now, because I was worried because we broke up. So then I get a call. This is a hop skip. We get these hops that help you really come along. Guy says, I need $17,500 worth of tarps. It's Friday. I need them on Monday. I was like, okay, I got it. We'll bring it to you. So I make the sale. I don't have this shit. So I call up, I got to go to 3 different suppliers. How am I going to get it to them? All these guys want $17,000 just to deliver it in that amount of time. All these trucking companies. I get my friend who's a PA. I get him. He's working on a film shoot right down the street. Just so happens to be. I said, what are you doing? He's like, I'm working on a shoot. I said, I'll pay you what they're paying. You help me drive this truck with his tarps to New York. I'm in Sherman Oaks, California.
Come on.
I said, we need a tandem, to get it there on Monday morning. I drive, you sleep, you drive, I sleep. 72 hours later, I deliver the tarps. I get the sale. Guy's like, what are you guys on? I thought we were getting on Tuesday. I'm like, you said Monday. I could have slept. So I deliver the tarps. I cry because I have money now. I could pay the rent, and that helped me push me forward. And I thought, well, that might be the biggest sale I ever have.
Hold on for a second, because that whole thing is crazy, and you went through it so quickly. Where did you find the investment first to be able to even buy these tarps to deliver the product? Was someone able to give you a loan to buy them?
I had through some of those sales that I made, I had just enough, prior for those 3 months I made some sales.
Right.
It was just enough revenue to give me some scratch to pay for the merchandise and max out my debit card. Cause I filed BK when I was a filmmaker
Right.
2 years before that. So I had no credit either.
Right.
So I'm screwed. So I just had enough scratch to like pay for the merchandise for that. My margins were good.
Right. And you couldn't even, I guess you couldn't even send it freight over land to get the tarps there on time on Monday. Cause that is a crazy drive schedule. I don't think truckers are like, you're insane.
Yeah, well, yeah, the trucking companies say, yeah, I'll do it, but I need like $16,000. That's all my money.
Right.
I'm not gonna make any money.
Right.
So, so I got a rental truck from the Galpin Ford in Hollywood, which is for film rental, and I used that truck, which is a much cheaper rate
Right.
than a U-Haul, and then I got my friend, and just delivered it, and then we took a train back.
Good for you. It really is always these stories and businesses that have started where like you have to just take a flyer that you're gonna make it and try to make it work and like cobble together friends and resources and all these things, and it kind of like you kind of will the universe in the direction that you're going, I think the difference is some businesses, they'll just hit a wall. Like most businesses at some point will die. The fact that because you still have this business, I was looking at the website, and the fact that it's been around for 20 plus years now, like you really are in the 0.1% of businesses that start. So it really is amazing that you're able to roll that into something to fund the rest of your life and like help you do these passion projects like, writing, producing, directing, and all of these things, because, I'm sure we've seen plenty of, friends and people throughout our lives in places like, Barcelona and, New York or LA, where you want to go and make your stamp on art. But at some point you have to be like, I'm going to starve. So I have to either move back to the Midwest or take a job doing whatever. So it's pretty cool that your backup ended up being such a grand slam.
I worked out of my house for like 3 years until the city kicked me out. So I also it was my film production company. So I'm doing the business and I'm doing Love Hollywood Style film, the production company, out of this rented shack in Sherman Oaks.
Right.
I was still paying $800 a month. He never, so that's my warehouse. That's the production company. That's where I live. I had a gym in my garage. I'm trying to keep my costs low. So that was able to me to save enough money. But then the city finally kicked me out because I had trucking companies, I had tents that I sold, and that I set up all the merchandise. And they're like, you can't do this here. What are you, nuts? Right. So then I finally had to get a little warehouse in North Hollywood. And then I think, shit, how am I going to pay for this? I was doing really well because I was, I still had a lot of money, but you're nervous. You're poor. You think you're going to lose it all. And I said, I'm never going to make as much money as this one sale. So then one day I get a call. This is just as I moved into this warehouse. I get a call from the state of Florida, and they said, we need $1 million worth of tarps. There's an emergency. There's been 4 hurricanes back to back in Florida. It's in 2004.
Right.
I said, okay, no problem. We're the largest tarp supplier in the country, which we weren't. I said, but I knew that I would get them for them. I knew I would deliver for them more than anybody else was, because I'm a 7-night, 7-day-a-week kind of guy.
Right.
So then within 6 hours, I got the tarps. I got the deal. The state of Florida is going to write me a check in 45 days. Then I have to borrow some credit cards. Then I got, and then I said, my family's like, you file BK, you're going to have to give us some percentage on the back end of this
right.
deal.
I want
so I'm making deals with my own family. Like, all right, credit card there. So I tell myself, wow, all my problems are over. I made $1 million in a day. I said, this is never going to happen again. And then 2005 comes around, and then Katrina happens, and I didn't get $1 million sale. But you know what happened was, because people started calling. Remember I said I wanted to be the calculator kid like my dad? Right. I didn't become the calculator kid, but they started calling me Hurricane Mike the next year.
Come on.
So they said, he's got the tarps. So all these companies are like, well, we don't have, but who's Hurricane Mike will have. So I got to be you Hurricane Mike. I'm like, that's ridiculous. I was like, I still want to be. I wish I was Happy Gilmore. I don't want that statue of Hurricane Mike. I want the Academy Award. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm fucking Hurricane Mike. Okay, So then $250,000 sale, $250,000 sale. So I'm starting to make these sales off of Katrina, and I said, well, I never think this will happen again. And you have those moments. But then there was a earthquake in Haiti, and that happens. And then there's these things that catapult you. So you keep your business lean. You make as much money as you can, and you know, when there's not those anomalies, right? And you make your margins, you know, healthy. You don't want to be the most expensive. You don't want to be the cheapest. You want to be right there, depending on your business model. And that's kind of like, you know, how I've operated ever since. And finally, you know, it takes a while, but finally I'm branding a whole patented line of products that are outdoor related, not so much tarp related. And hopefully it'll be the next big thing that you hear about as far as outdoor gear is concerned.
Right. Well, that's really great, because do you spend a lot of time on that business, or what is the biggest passion project outside of the business itself? Is it more like doing stand-up and honing your skills on stage as a comic, or do you want to get back into writing and acting? Is there some dream that's in the back of your head that is like the light's always on? Does that exist?
This is a really good question, because everybody that's driving is probably listening to this probably has that thing. And they say, what are you great at? What do you really want? Those two questions, right? I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. And, you know, one thing is it's in my DNA is I'm a salesperson. My dad was a salesman. He loved it. Not to sell people things and get over them, because I love people. Like today, what you and I are doing, Michael, is like, this is fun for me. This is life. This is like conversing.
Right.
I'd love to be in a deli at 2:00 in the morning talking to a bunch of people. You know, so I'm a salesman at heart. I like to market, promote, and advertise. I'm a promoter. That's in my DNA. What I feel like I was really built to do is be a stand-up comedian. Because because of my childhood, because of my mother, you know, because of all, you know, my life, the way things have progressed, I just feel like I'm built to do that. One thing I feel like I'm destined to be an entrepreneur. I feel like I'm built to be a stand-up comedian. Now, what would I want to, you know, the first thing I did before I was an entrepreneur, I made people laugh to kind of survive, not to get my ass kicked, not to like, you know, so I'm probably going to finish my life out the way I started it. I'm going to probably one day you have to have it's good to have an exit strategy. You don't have to with a business, but I'm going to have one, but it's going to be a long time.
Right.
And but I'm starting stand-up comedy again, and I'm going to do that along with my business, because I figured out a way to it'll help the business in a roundabout kind of way. You try to leverage that where you can.
Right.
This logo you're going to be seeing every time I go on stage. You're going to see this logo. I'll just tell you that.
It's a nice one. I like it a lot.
Thank you. So, stand-up comedy is what I feel like. You know, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do until the day I die. Like Dick Shawn died on stage. He was a '60s comedian. To be like, you know, just die. That'll be me, maybe.
Right.
And but I'm a promoter. That's you know when everybody else is working and doing all these things, and shouldn't you be doing that? It's like no. If I could leverage that, and somebody's working that spreadsheet, and somebody's doing that, I'm planning the vision, the creativity of the business, and I'm promoting the business. Right. Which I love, those two things, promoting and comedy, keep me up at night until really late, which I did last night.
Right. Well, even a lot of people that I've seen, like there's some stand-ups that I've only seen on Instagram that now they're starting to get their breaks on, like the Tonight Show, for example. What's his name? Farmar. I think he's an Indian guy. I forget his name, and he was on the Tonight Show last night, and it was just so cool because he's just been showing us he's working bits out on stage, and always super hilarious. And like you said, if you can promote yourself, I think it's shocking how far you can go in this day and age to say, like, listen, I've got a talent, I've got hilarious material, but I'm just not getting my break through the conventional channels right now. Like I'm not getting a Netflix special. I'm not getting big arena tours. So like I need to go out there and hustle and show people what I got. And this guy seems to be doing it super well. Like comedy and Instagram seem to really go like hand in hand right now. Like is that kind of like the groundswell you're seeing with comedy? It's kind of like everyone is trying to really like push out all their material to get that fan base.
Oh my God, yes.
Right.
That is like exactly what's happening. And it's great, you know, and you say, well, there's tons of competition. With stand-up comedy, the only competition is truly with yourself. If there was no other comedians doing their thing, it's not like you got this amazing shot. I mean, you probably maybe have better, but you know what? Stand-up comedy more so than anything requires your thumbprint. Because if you don't have that, you don't find and you shave down the who you are and then show that on stage of really who you are, hey, you don't really have that je ne sais quoi that you need to find,
Right.
which is you. You need to show who you are, and all those negative associations and all those, truthfulnesses that tickle people funny, because you'll have everybody's got the similar situations that you're going to talk about, but your particular insecurity or negative association towards that thing is what people are going to want to really identify with and see.
Right. Yeah, because I've heard a lot of comics when you start, you end up having the voice of your favorite comic until you can figure who you really are on stage, and probably in general, so you can wait to be as comfortable as you are with yourself. So then you're speaking with your voice and not Bill Burr's or George Carlin's or whomever. Where I think, like, when I only did 5 minutes on stage once, and I think I was more like Carlin possessed a little bit. Right, stuff I wanted to say, people I wanted to tell stuff to, and I had a couple great bits in it. But like now, I even say if I would go back to it now, I think I would have a little bit more like relaxed, where I was just like trying to remember the words on the page. There was not as much flow because I was so fucking crazy nervous for the people in the crowd. So it's good for you for doing it, man. It's a great like lifelong muscle to build. A lot of reps you can get.
Yeah, and I'm one of the few comedians that that think, that you should study with a coach. Greg Dean, who's one of the top comedy writers in planet Earth, comedy, coaches, stand-up comedy coaches, who's written several books. You can look him up.
Cool.
I studied with him last night. We did a writing group, and I never want to be a teacher, but I'll hopefully, because comedy is so Zen and Taoist, hopefully it'll be like, every time you go on stage, it's a little bit of like an exploration of you and an audience and people and psychology, and it's a growing experience. So that's the one thing where your stimulus response timing might be a little slower as you get older, like let's say in your 80s,
Yeah.
But Rickles, who I just saw like before I died, still had this intelligent, like rapid fire, a little slower than it was, but like still very intelligent, like material. A lot of comedians, your intelligence. That's why there's older presidents as opposed to like guys that are in their 20s, because the reasoning of your mind gets more sophisticated. Your stimulus response, the way you punch and react might be a little less. And the problem is, older comedians, like a younger comedy audience is really about 30ish or something, right? So they want to, a lot of times they want to see somebody that's their age they can identify with.
Right.
But that's the job of a super younger comedian or a super older comedian, to identify with the audience and find that rapport.
Yeah, it seems like Bo Burnham is really like, he's one of the few people to kind of match together the age range from like the younger digital generation who grew up on YouTube as he did, to the older like comedy generation. And so like his fans are all going with him. I only found him a couple years ago, and then I saw Inside on Netflix, which blew the back of my head off, and I'm starting to think he might end up being the Carlin of this generation if he continues to produce content and do stand-up and things like that. So I don't know. But I want to be respectful of your time. So the last question I'd love to ask you, as we talked about like how nebulous our 20s could be, what advice would you give to someone in, let's say, their early 20s who felt like, it sounds like you and I did, where like the world just seems so big, you seem so small, and you kind of don't know where to start? Like, what would you say to a kid like that?
Okay, this is going to sound like some work. It's not going to be a quick sentence. I'm sorry, but this is what you should do. Okay, and this goes for any age, but as soon as possible, I already said it, try to get a plan for personal development. That doesn't mean poppycocky or you got to be like, like, I'm just saying, look, map out your plan for you. And before you even map it out, know your wants, the who, what, where, why, when, and how of you. Take your time, get some type of personal development coach. Well, I don't need money. Well, to find somebody, that you can, that person can be, or start to have content. Take your time spend some time with that and invest in that. So so you have a scope, a 30,000 foot scope of who you are, the who, what, where, why, when, and how, and then map it out and take your time. And there's going to be, well, that didn't work. That's fine. But really do some work and really kind of, formally, take your time with it, just don't think about it. Really kind of put it down to pen to paper and get it visualized, and then also work with somebody somehow, some way, or get, audio programs, or do something to where you're having that stimulus every day. Working out, you go to the gym every day. Well, you need to do this every day if you want to have the same result.
That's great. And the most important thing, like you said, is like just start. It'll lead to something. Just start. That was pretty profound. So that's a great way to lead off. So Michael, thanks for your story and your time today. And I hope to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
So thanks for listening to Know More, Know Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you did enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.